Welcome everybody to the Real Dad Podcast.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh God, to the Real Dad Podcast. I'm Dave.
Wow.
I'm Joey.
I'm Mark. Where the fuck are we?
Most pathetic. I'm Brian. Let's Dad.
The universe is way out of balance.
Everything's upside down.
Have you ever wondered what like an ADD hurricane looks like if we had have been filming Mark this past 50 minutes?
We should have went live.
We should have went live.
Really
That would have been a
Telling
good
you,
laugh.
that's a real show right there.
Just watching your brain cook. There were so many things going on up there
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
that you're processing right now.
Those are only the thoughts that I like made it to my mouth. Imagine the shit that didn't escape.
Still trapped up in the toque.
There was no escape for those thoughts. They're still up there.
Okay.
My wife sent me a clip of like, this is how you know you are ADHD or whatever.
okay.
Like if you
Isn't everybody nowadays?
Yeah.
feel
100%.
these, but like they were like some of them I was like, I don't know, it doesn't really seem like you. And she's like, no, that 100% is me. I'm like, well, then you're really good at that part where it says you disguise it all.
Right.
And I was like, she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I had no idea.
Good for you.
Really locked in.
I just wanted to hit this early. You know, this show's brought to you by Regal Ideas
wow,
and
okay.
the Kawartha Home Hardware Group.
Off the top.
Two companies that go together like peanut butter and jelly.
There are peanut butter. We're the bread.
Spaghetti and meatballs. Can we be the sauce?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Wine
I'd
and
rather
cheese.
be the fork. But,
You're definitely the wine.
Okay.
no, wait.
All right.
Well,
Two incredible
Kawartha Home
companies.
Hardware. Yeah.
You can buy your Regal Ideas at the Kawartha Home Hardware if you would like to.
It just makes sense.
Any one of their
What stores are
groups.
in? What stores are in the?
Well, don't look,
Don't
don't
look. You're
There
being
is
recorded and you're under oath.
Lindsay, Millbrook, Coboconk, Bridge North, and Lakefield.
Wow.
I blacked out. it just came to me.
We finally got it.
14 months.
And
he's crushed it.
with Regal Ideas, we want to shout out Deck Stars, which is brought to you by Regal Ideas, where you can learn more about Regal and how to install it. Joey and I are going to be doing some Deck Stars webinars where you can have live teaching from Joey and I. You can ask us questions.
Can I come to
Big
that?
news.
We'll give you answers
it?
and teach you just how easy it is to install. And then if you are a builder as well, the Deckstars is a great place to be able to get leads and stuff as well, because Regal puts their brand out onto a lot of TV shows. They don't even pay to get on them. They just sneak it in there.
He's going full
And
spiel.
I was going to say,
They do
like,
a
this
great
is
job.
too much information.
They get a lot of leads in of builders,
The
and they
average
need builders
person
in
doesn't
local
care.
areas. And if you're a Deckstar,
What
they
is
can
it?
hook you up.
It's a railing and it'll keep you safe. It's not going to bend like those other guys. That's
There
all you
it
had to
is.
say.
And
That's it.
some of them light up.
They do light up.
LED
And
lights.
Very easy to install.
Beep,
and
beep, pew.
They use a remote control.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to start this episode
With a 20-minute ad read.
Yep.
Where are we going from here?
With the whole TikTok ban
Yep.
and controversy, everything over there.
that's-
I've got a whole
go
saved
political.
collection. No, we're not going political. I've got a saved collection on TikTok
Okay.
of Real Dad clips that when I'm scrolling and something catches my eye, dad related,
Okay.
I save it.
Okay.
And I always save it with the intent of like bringing it up to see kind of what conversation it stirs up.
Okay.
I want to do a little like reaction video
Okay.
to some TikToks. So I'm going to play a clip and we'll see if it sparks anything to talk about. Okay.
Okay.
So first off, we have a Joe Rogan clip coming to you.
Never heard this clip before.
Concept of coddling children, creating, what someone would call a mama's boy, someone who is scared of the outside world and just wants comfort and attention and just wants to be sheltered from stress and anxiety all the time.
Yeah, it happens. But why does it happen? So there's a study that I quote in the book. They looked at several hundred women, new mothers, and how they related to their infants. Most of them related very well. Some were not that available, and some were extra doting and extra coddling, you might say, with their infants. They looked at the adults 35 years later. The people that were the most independent and successful and self-actualized were the ones that were super loved by their mothers. The conclusion of the researchers was, you can't love children too much. Now, the case that you describe is not too much loving, but loving that comes from a very anxious place. So these mothers that coddle their kids when the kids doesn't need coddling, they're not doing it because the child needs it. They're doing it because they need it.
Right.
They're doing it because they were not coddled enough.
I
They're
hate when the
anxious,
music
and
cuts
they pass
out.
that anxiety onto the child.
What about
So
Okay, what's that guy's name again?
Dr.
Shawarma.
Gabor
He's the mushroom guy.
Mate, or
Yeah.
Mati.
Yeah,
I love a lot of his stuff.
I
He's
know.
a really good like psychologist.
Yeah.
But I found that clip interesting, just talking about that aspect of that. One, you can't love your kids too much. So I think there is a fear in what Joe Rogan said. I think people have a fear of loving their kids too much and creating
Right.
that coddled kid, or they think that if I love my kid too much, they're going to be too soft and dependent on me, and they're not going to become their own independent person. But what he's saying is that it's actually, you can't love them too much.
Right.
But your anxiety can pass on to your kids.
Yeah, and I like a lot of what the things that he said there, and even in the fact that like the opposite is true. If you're not loving your kid enough, then they're going to live their life searching for love in other people and their approval because they
Right.
don't know what that feels like. But they can see other people have that sense of self, and they have that sense of, oh, I am approved, or they have confidence, right? Like that's one of the biggest things I think we look for as we get into our teenage years and 20s. Like, why aren't I confident enough? I know I did. I'll speak for myself.
Okay.
Where it's you look to other people who are confident and you wonder why you don't have that same level of it. And I feel like some of that can come from that. Where
From which part of that?
From the
Not being loved
yeah,
enough?
the absence of like overbearing love. I feel like that's a weird way to say that. But
Not
yeah,
overbearing
Or
love,
just
but
like super
like,
affectionate.
yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
oversaturated, if anything.
Yeah.
Like, right.
exactly. Well, we've talked about that before. Like I think my dad only recently, within the last 3 years, has said "I love you" to me. Where stuff like that, you don't know the role that it has played in who you are now, but seeing that type of stuff and hearing that kind of stuff from
Right.
therapists and psychologists, where it's like you start to connect those dots a little bit. But yeah, it totally makes sense that the fear lives that you're going to hinder your kid by being overbearing, and like helicopter parent became this trigger thing that everybody attached to, right? Like, oh, you don't want to be a helicopter parent all over your child, where there is a difference between a fully anxious person, where like even Ian chatted about that last week, right? Where anxiety led parenting is much different than loving parenting, I think.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
I think in my head, and kind of again, a touch on what Ian had said, but like it is the literal everything that the parent is putting behind it. What is the emotion that you're putting behind it? Because your kid's picking up on that. So Ian referenced the story of like when they put their kids to bed, because he was so anxious, his heart is racing. So his baby's laying on his chest and his heart is racing because he's feeling anxiety. Why isn't my kid going to sleep? Why am I failing as a parent? Your kid's going to pick up on that energy, because that's just what's kind of happening in the room. That's the way you're reacting with them and interacting with them. Where I think there's a difference between someone who just loves to cuddle their kid. And it's like, because that, I think for a long time, it seemed like, oh, like you cuddle your son in his bed for half an hour. Yeah, I fucking love doing it.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people still look at that as a negative thing. Where like, oh, you're being way too over the top with your kid. That's way too affectionate. They're going to learn to be whatever soft down the road. It's like, no, my kid's going to know that I love them down the road.
We
quite different.
saw that in like how we chose to kind of deal with sleep. I wouldn't say sleep training, but how we chose to like deal with like night times when they would be crying or something like that. We would always go in and pick them up and cuddle them. Like we would never leave them. That's just like how we chose to do it. And it has never felt like the wrong decision.
Right.
And we have never felt like it's backfired on us at all. Like they're all great sleepers now. They don't get up in the night. Like,
Right.
So there hasn't been any negative to it. And it was a decision we made early to, if they need us, we will go to them and pick them up and show them. Like, so that's, and yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of ties into that whole conversation.
absolutely.
It was never a negative thing.
Yeah.
And it was always approaching it, not out of like an anxious, like I need to get them back to sleep. It was like
What do you need? Yeah.
I'm just here for you kind of snuggle, basically.
Yeah.
And it, never backfired on us. So
Was it hard in the time while you were doing it? Can you remember back then?
And mostly with our oldest, like for the first time
kid,
around,
right.
Yeah.
there was a lot more like anxious, like get back to sleep.
Right.
But it was like when we realized that wasn't working, and it was just like too stressful for us.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
That
yeah,
we were
yeah.
like, this is dumb. Like, let's just kind of give in and just be like, just commit to just a quality snuggle for like a few more times
Yeah.
during the night for the next little while. And then eventually it just kind of like sorted itself out. Like,
Right.
but we had no idea what was going to, like, if it was going to work or not. But
Yeah.
because like you hear everybody's different ideas
yeah,
of sleep
100%.
training or
Yeah.
whatever. And what
Yeah.
everybody has their own.
But
Like,
I think what you said is a great example of that. Is that like one, you came to a conclusion on that together,
Yeah.
and you both were a team in that decision. So
Yeah.
when it's the middle of the night and the baby wakes up
Yeah.
and needs that snuggle, it's not a you got to go do this because this was your choice.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
wanted to do
yeah.
it this way, so then you go
Yeah.
deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm staying in bed. Like
Gotta be a team
You
game.
didn't. Yeah, you as like a tag team. You can take turns, or somebody can pick it up when somebody else is too tired and stuff.
yeah, and now when the mom is breastfeeding, it often ends up on
Yeah.
their shoulders,
Right.
Because that's what they're looking for a lot of the time, like the comfort they're looking for.
Yeah.
and that's a huge commitment that mom has to make or chooses to make in that scenario. But
Yeah.
You didn't try feeding it, Albert? You didn't want to give it a go?
That is a really interesting one. I think it does tie in really well.
Yeah.
Because we did more of the cried out with
Yeah.
both the kids. And it's funny, like I remember going through it and it feeling more unnatural. To be like, all right, we're just sitting here while the kid's crying out, but it's like something that we both took into it. We read through Baby Wise is the books that we read before we had kids, and it's pro cried out. It kind of does a combination of scheduled everything and feeding off of what your kid's kind of giving you for their vibes and stuff. So we did it does a mix of those, which is what we liked about it. But it is interesting going through the process, and especially now reflecting back on it, because I feel like now, I feel like going into it, I thought that it was going to create a lot more independence in the kids. And I don't know if I knew that's what I wanted or not for bedtime specifically.
Yeah.
Where I think we went through that method, but then coming out the other side, we still do laydowns every night, which I didn't think we'd do.
Right.
We're laying with each, we're taking turns, we're laying down with the
Yeah,
kids.
but
for
it's more the
15,
if they
20
wake
minutes.
up in the night, how they can
How they
get
can put
themselves back to
yeah,
sleep
in those
instead of
early
needing
stages.
somebody.
I think it just more in my head back then.
You
I was
thought it
like,
would be-
I thought it would lead to more like, all right, kids, like off to bed type of thing. Like and I don't know what my reaction was to that specifically, but I find it just interesting now that we do a lot more in bedroom bedtime with my kids than we did back then.
Did
Right.
you have those laydowns when you were a kid?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you ever crave those? Do you
Not
remember?
to my knowledge. Yeah. I had a very complex like bedtime with kids. I always shared a room with my brother Jake too, which
Same.
is just more complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just remember like the good night, love you out.
Well, what I think in like such a big family, and you
Yeah.
being on the younger end, like
Yeah.
the expectation wouldn't be there
It wouldn't
for
have
that,
ever been
right?
there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't remember a single positive bedtime experience as a kid. It was
Yeah.
always a fight, and it was always just negative. And I don't mean fight like resistance, but it
Yeah.
was always like a you need to get to bed, you're gonna be this, and it was like just such a toxic kind of like
Right.
really bad like speaking before a kid's supposed to go to bed kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when my wife and I still do laydowns and we trade off. So we'll be like one night is with one kid and then the next
Right.
one's and the next one. And it, for me, the switch has been like, I'm trying actively to not be on my phone while I'm like laying down and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
trying to fall asleep kind of thing. So we'll read books. It's cool that my daughter's at an age where like she can read me the books.
Yeah.
Yeah,
now.
that's awesome.
So it's fun to kind of like see that. But we did have this conversation where she's like, I was on the bus and I was like talking about how like I'm excited to read you these stories at laydowns, but none of my friends do laydowns with their parents. And then she's like, are we gonna have to stop doing laydowns? And then I was like, do you want to? She's like, no, but I don't want to get made fun of either. And then I was like, then just don't tell your friends that you do the laydowns. But like, if you want to stop, then I'll stop doing laydowns. And then she's like, no, I do not. Like, for the record, I do not want to stop the laydowns. But it is interesting because then it's like, well, like why don't you want, like,
Yeah.
do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's when do you stop it? Or like, it came to that realization too. And Robin and I have talked about it. My wife have been kind of like, she's getting to that age where like
Stuff like that.
shit's probably gonna start. She's gonna want to get more independent.
Yeah.
She's gonna start doing things and like,
Yes and no, because I think like maybe they don't necessarily want the laydowns, but there's an element to like the tuck in that's still there. Because like even with my kids, like we don't lay in bed with them till they fall asleep.
Yeah.
But when I tuck them in, like they always want back scratches. So it's like I'll give them back scratches. We'll chat about their day.
Just looks
and
different.
then it's like prayers.
Yeah.
We've got our little like I love you things that we do.
Yeah.
And then good night and like walk out. And then it's like, but dad, one more. And it's like, but dad, one more. But dad. And like they're trying to like stall. And I'm like, okay, I'm fucking exhausted now. Go to sleep. So we're not like, I'll lay in the bed while I give them back scratches and you're having that. But then they're going to sleep on their own.
yeah,
But they still very much like, even though they're a little older, they still very much like crave that time. Because we've always kind of had that bedtime tuck in.
it's those talks are my favorite, and that's where
They're
it's
so
like
good.
it's where it's very interesting and it's different with both of them. Where like my daughter's very inquisitive about my life. So she's like, when you were
little
younger, like,
interviewer.
did you do the thing? And like, when you were younger, and I know it's because she wants to spark a conversation to stay up later.
Right.
Yeah.
So she's
Play
like,
in the game.
and like, I don't know what book she's reading, but she's like in the psychology of like, people love to talk about themselves. So I'm just going to ask them a bunch of questions about themselves. So I'm just like, well, it was a rainy day. Let me tell you.
My kids always just love to hear about the times that I got hurt growing up. They're
Yeah.
like, tell me another time that you got hurt. I'm like, all right.
You're enjoying this a little too much. I find it interesting too from the perspective of like that conversation you would have had with your daughter and that like an opportunity to teach her on like, yes, you're going to want to stop this one day, but I want you to choose to stop it for the right reason. Not because you think you're getting made fun of from friends, but because you're just wanting to have a little bit more independence, or you're wanting to just read at night and not have snuggles. Like that opportunity to have those teachable moments. I just remember us talking about it before in respects to like, when do you know your kid's ready, or when do you know they're at certain stages, and letting them get there. And I feel like that's a part of it. It's like when they get there, also trying to coach them and parent them through, okay, but stop these types of things for your reasons, not anybody else's. And how that can foster that just independent thinking for them.
Yeah. I obviously I can't get into too much because family members will listen to this, but it is interesting for her to be like, when so-and-so was this to you, like, how did you handle it? And then in my head, I'm just having a very honest conversation. I'm like, I did this and I did that. And now that I'm older, I forgive them, and it's just nothing.
Yeah.
But they hurt you, and like you used to cry and you used to do these things, and it's like, but I choose not to live in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're like, those things are going to happen, and you're going to have situations where it happens, and you can't let it control you or live in it, because then you're going to be like, have a real sad and upsetting life. So like, you need to learn how to move on from certain things.
But like you can get into some in-depth conversations
And
with
we
those
have
bedtimes.
and like, and Robin's kind of like, dude, she's 7, like she doesn't need to be talking about this like at bedtime and like heavy things. But we always end it on a positive note.
Yeah.
And I think, and then we like turn on Taylor Swift, and then it's like, you know, we have the talks where we like shut it down.
Yeah.
But I think Robin is at a point now where like, my daughter will say, I want to do bedtimes with dad. I want to do bedtimes with dad. And it's like, she knows that we'll have a conversation and bedtime gets drawn out. Whereas with mom, it's more of like you need your sleep. Read me your 2 pages. And then it's more of like, she has her cues and her markers, where I'm just like, whatever, I don't fucking care. You want to be up till 9:30? Let's do this.
It's always the running joke of like a kid gets into the van after school or something. It's like, oh, how was your day? It's like, good.
Yeah.
Like no information. Like, what'd you do? Nothing.
Yeah.
What was this about? Not much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're laying down in bed and it's like, so today at school, but I find it's that time when everything quiets, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Because like the chaos of school and everything that's going on, then like dinner and whatever, they're like playing games or doing things, and then now it's like, and your world just like stills for a moment, and it allows your brain to just like reflect, open up, and
Yeah, I think when the kids get off the bus or like they get home from school, there's this mystery of like, what did I miss?
Right.
What's happening?
Yeah.
What
as a
am
parent.
Both. Like,
Yeah.
I think like even like as a kid, when you're like your day, you just went off and did this whole day. Now you're
Right.
coming home and you're like, what's going on with this? What are we doing for dinner? Where's the thing? And their mind is just constantly like,
It's active.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like, it's the thing. It's like, what did you do today? I'm like, I don't give a fuck about what I did. Like, where am I
Right.
going? What are
What's
we doing?
happening
How
now?
many
Yeah.
people am I going to see?
Yeah.
Are there presents? Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing? You know what I'm saying? And then at bedtime, it's very much like you said. It's that kind of like, oh my God, remember when that happened at
Yeah.
lunch? And then it's kind of, but that could be a slippery slope too, of like letting your mind do that kind of scrambled egg approach before bed.
But it can be good too to get it out, because I feel for myself anyways, like if I don't have that outlet of like talking things out, like if Meg and I have had like a pure veg night where we're just sitting on screens or on TVs and then we go up, brush our teeth and lay down, and it's kind of like, then I start going through my day and going through everything that happens, where when we've had a chance to kind of chat it out and talk things through, then it's kind of like, oh, I've already kind of thought through most of my day. But that's just my brain, and everybody's is different.
Last night, Joy would not shut up. It was like we finished season 1 of Dexter, which is great. We're catching up, and it's a lovely series so far.
Okay.
But then like we got into bed, and it was already pretty
Wait, hold
late.
on.
It
The
was-
new, like the old Dexter?
yeah,
Dexter.
we're like, I'm going way back. We got into bed. It was like 12:15. And
Is that
I'm
late or
tired.
early?
It's late for us. So then it's like, okay, like lay down and
sleeping
then
time.
like turn the lights out and you lay down and head hits the pillow and it's like and it was just like she wouldn't stop. It was like middle of the day conversation and then I was just yeah.
Yeah, the short answers.
Okay. She's like, okay, I'll let you go to sleep. Thank you.
The fundamental sign of I'm all done talking.
Just stop responding.
I just fall asleep. Like I don't even like Robin will be like, and then I'm just thinking, and then she'll be like, Mark, yeah, were you asleep? Yes. And then right back to bed.
All right, our next clip is brought to you by Gary Vee. I find
Mark's boy.
him very interesting, coming from a generation older than us, because I feel like he's that 70s baby probably,
Yep.
and was like raised in the 80s. So he and an immigrant family where his parents worked a lot and he works a lot. So yeah, I find his perspectives interesting. So let's give you this one.
Kids under 30, if you're listening, at 10 p.m., there would be this like public service announcement commercial in the 80s that would come on and be like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Because sometimes they forgot that we hadn't come home yet.
You're right. My childhood, my parents, they had no idea who we were. And we just came back at night, right? When it was dark, I had to come back. My wife has never had a minute when my kids were younger than 18 where she didn't know where they were.
How about the fact now that it extends way past 18? The amount of people I've met who have a fucking app on their 23-year-old to know exactly where they are physically at all times is fucked up. It makes a 23-year-old feel like no shit, they're acting like they're 5. No fuck, they suck at work. They're fucking zoo animals. They can't live in the jungle. They're fucking being tracked by their fucking 59-year-old parent. They're on the payroll. They're being tracked. And then you're upset that they can't stand on their own 2 feet? No shit. You created a fucking bubble, baby. I think the neighborhoods really shaped us. And I really genuinely believe the over-coddling of knowing everything about your kid, every second of everything where they are. We were growing up, like, I don't know, fights and getting hit by a stick and like fucking reconciling shit without parents. You were learning how to function. Kids under 30, if you're listening, at 10 p.m.
You can just turn it off.
But again, another like somewhat older generation
Yeah.
look on something. I found the one line interesting where he's like, those neighborhoods formed us. And it's like, I don't know, there is an element to the independence that you got growing up. And I find like myself, mind you, this is now kind of like spilling into teenagehood, I imagine they're talking about. Like, you're not, Gary Vee's not a 7-year-old running the streets of New York kind of guy. But
in the 80s, you might have been.
maybe. But I think just like speaking to that freedom that there once was, where now there's air tags, people know where their kids are every minute of every day. Walking to school growing up, I had my group of friends. We would meet together and we would walk to school and we would walk home. There would be a lot of fun and random stuff that would happen along the way to school. You find a dead squirrel. You find people to throw little berries at. You throw things at cart. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do to get into trouble walking to school. But my parents didn't know.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe they were watching behind us and not saying anything. But like from what we understood, we had like free reign of that time of life.
Right.
Or I would come home from school and go out with my friends.
Yep.
So like Brian had sent another video as well about like, are we over scheduling our kids? Where for me, like when I got home from school, I'd watch Pokemon and we would go play street hockey or cards at somebody's house or something. But there wouldn't even be a phone call really. Like the show would end and we would all just like go outside in front of one of our buddies' houses.
Right.
And then he would come out and everybody would meet there and we would hang out.
Wait for a door to open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't get the fully harping on knowing the location, because I'm 1,000% going to know the location of my kids as they grow up if they're going to have a device on them. But I think it is the difference of, can you send your kids out the door to walk to school with their friends, or do you have to be walking with them or driving them once they hit a certain age, right?
Yeah, but I think it's if the kid knows you're always following them though. Is there a psychological connection?
And again, like I
there?
think that comes down to the relationship with the parent, not specifically the thing itself. So I think of like a friend of ours who where like her mom was notorious for like checking in on her, making sure she's safe,
telling her the
making sure she knows
weather.
the weather. Where it's like that's anxiety-led parenting.
Right.
You're putting that on your kid of like you're gonna get hurt. So I need to give you all this information so that when you get hurt, I can either be right there for you or say I told you so because I filled you with all this information, right? Like I think it is just that difference of, I think loving parenting and anxiety-led parenting can be.
What if your kid comes to you and says, "I don't like that you're doing this. Could you stop?"
Right.
I think there's an age maybe, but it's also like technology has changed since the 80s. If they had that technology back then, would they have known where they were?
I don't know.
And is there an element to like over big brothering, like over helicoptering your parents or your kids?
It's frustrating because our parents were raised by parents that had to go through a bunch of shit because our grandparents were in the war and they had to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was either through anxiety or depression or alcoholism or a whole bunch of stuff.
I was going to say they didn't deal with all that stuff, and that was part of the problem.
But the thing is, though, is a lot of even a lot of our parents were born not out of love, but because that's what you did. You got married and then you had kids, and a lot of their parents didn't even want to be parents, so that's why they had to have those commercials. So then you have a whole generation of parents in our parents' generation that are now trying to they're trying to be like quote unquote friend or like the cool mom and dad, right? So they gave us a little bit more slack than what they had. And then it turned into they just wanted the freedom themselves because being a fucking involved parent is a bunch of bullshit. Right? And so they needed those breaks and they needed the separations, which gave us the freedom to fuck around and find out.
Right.
But a lot of that fucking around to find out freedom from a lot of people were like, whoa, like there's a lot of shit, crazy shit that can happen. And then we're in the age of technology where it's nothing but fear mongering is thrown at you nonstop. And you have the whole world is pedophiles and everybody wants to just take your kid and, all the stuff. So now all of a sudden it's like, you don't know what to do. Yes, there still are great people. Yes, there still are this, that, and the other thing. But I think every single generation says they had it better than the one before them.
Yeah.
And then every single generation thinks that the one after them is is fucking nuts.
Yeah.
So it's just a part of the circle.
But
of life.
were neighborhoods safer back in the day?
I don't know. I think they were more connected. I think you didn't have as many people moving around, and you didn't have as many.
Because you actually knew your neighbor.
You knew your neighbor. Well, you thought you did, and that's again. This comes down to like the fear mongering and the things that you've seen, right? Where like the stuff that comes out now because we have more available to us through widespread news and social media. You learn more about the fact that a lot of sexual abuse and stuff like that happens with the people that are in your community, and you do know really well. So then that stuff comes out. So now you have, I think, a generation that's very happy to just be in a bubble and say, nope, I'm not going to have my kids out in the neighborhood where I can't see them because I don't know what can happen to them while they're out there, right?
Yeah.
Which again can be more fear and anxiety led, but I think that's a product of our generation and where we're at.
And the reality is, like, a lot more people have access to your kids now than they ever have. So, like, there's an element there. It's like there is a lot more dangerous things that could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what about the element of what he said with like they were reconciling things without parents? So like fights would happen or Buddy would like hit somebody with a stick and they would have to deal with it in their own way. There wasn't a parent saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
You apologize to them. I don't know, obviously, what his situation was and how those friendships played out and stuff, but it was
that's
very
good
much
to a certain
like,
extent.
Yeah, but the world was so different back then. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
remember going to my dad's work. He worked at the Toronto Star, okay? Newspaper. You go in the office and there was like sunshine girls posted all over the place. Like that shit wouldn't fly right now.
Yeah.
So I'm like a 5 or 6 year old girl boy, and there's like
that's a story.
but there's girl butt cheeks all over the
Yeah.
place and everything, and I'm kind of like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying? You're
Right.
just kind of like, what is that? And then you just kind of like brush it off, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus now, like none of that shit would have happened. So I think
Completely different world.
I think we were forced to deal with things that were maybe over our like outside of Sesame Street a little bit from an earlier age.
Okay.
But I also think our parents were exposed to some shit before their Sesame Street ended, and their parents before that, and their parents before that. And that's like the whole hard times create, tough people, and soft times, whatever the fuck the quote is. But I just think every single generation thinks like, back in my day, we had it made. We'd go to Blockbuster and waste a Friday night.
One thing that I find interesting about Gary V's clips, this one and there's another one I saved for another day, but I find sometimes what he does and what I see in people is we can justify the way we parent or find ways to justify the way we parent. So he, from what I at least observe via social media, is a very busy, business-focused, business-minded person. The thing that you put the most amount of your attention to will see the most success. He's put a lot of time into growing his business from a very young age and has always kind of done that. And he has clips talking about like he didn't see his dad. His dad didn't come to ball games. His dad was working to keep their family living the American dream so that he could become who he is today. And I feel like sometimes the clips that he shares are justifying that version of parenting of this is my life, so I need to justify not being as present in my kid's life day to day because I'm working, being a busy businessman. So I try to find those clips and things that make him to make himself feel better about it, kind of, because like the internet has opinions from every source.
Like you're saying, you never see him talk about how that was hard for him,
right?
He talks about that all the time. Like no one is a bigger Gary B fanboy than I am. He's divorced. He has kids. He now is flipping the script because he is very charismatic. So his messaging is like not so much work. His messaging now is you can work 4 hours a day, but it's the it's the productivity that you're doing while you're working. So he's trying to build this empire to buy the jets. So when he is at work, he's showing what he's at work. But when he's not at work, he's completely shut down and he's completely with his kids.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk about his kids and stuff or his family because he's divorced and he's legally not allowed to.
Right.
So he's not able to have that. And if you go back 5-6 years, it was this work hustle. And they're like, he would do posts from him sitting on the ground at a Pearson airport because he was flying back and forth and he was doing the things. He's like, people think entrepreneurship is private jets and blah, 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 blah. And so his whole messaging now is he has this call in time, tea with Gary Vee. And he streams it and you can watch it. And this one guy called, he's like, I own my own business. I just retired my wife. Now she's involved in the business. We have 2 kids. He's like, but I'm having a hard time like feeling productive because I'm not able to work. And it hit me because it resonated very much with me. And Gary's like, what are your goals? Oh, this is my goal. He's like, where are you at? He's the thing. And Gary's like, it sounds like you have it made, man. Like you're able to just like, you're making good money. You are able to spend time with your family and you're able to kind of do like, you don't hate going to work. So what's the problem?
Right.
And then he's just like, I just don't feel successful. He's like, because you think success is, Gucci bags and this, that, and the other thing. And he's like, but that's just not, it comes in times. And like, the only thing I can think of is like, if you're working 4 hours and you're doing the work for 4 hours, you're more productive than somebody who's working for 8 hours and hates their job and they're taking 16 bathroom breaks a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the amount of work that you need to do.
Yeah. I think I was more leaning on like the side of like, how often do we as people try to justify try to find ways to justify things. I think of like Joey's dad as an example, who for the majority of his life was on the Atkins diet. Joey's dad is by no means a fit individual, but the Atkins diet allowed him to eat the things that he likes to eat while still being on a diet, right? Where it's like, no, all those other ones are bad. I read an article, this is the one. And like he gets to eat his pork rinds and like the fat on the steak and like all the things that he loves, right? Yeah. But like, does he find a way to justify the thing that he wants, right?
And there's a bunch of reasons for that, even within and of itself, right? Like talking about parenting specifically, where it's like it could be because you're trying to avoid what your parent did, so now you justify the decisions you made based on that.
Right.
Or I think, anyways, in someone like Gary Vee's case, it seemed like he was very close with his dad still. So even though he worked a ton, he had a lot of respect and a lot of love for his dad. And I hope they had a good relationship, but. Yeah. So then you justify it in that way. My dad didn't screw up. I love my dad and I had a great relationship with my dad. He made me independent. That's what he did for me. Where it's like, yes, that worked for you and your relationship, but I think there's also a ton of research and stuff that's come out about like, no, the more involved you are in your kid's life, the better off your relationship and you should be. But yeah, I think it's a matter of what the motivation is behind it, why you're trying to excuse it. And I think that's also human nature, right? We don't want to be wrong. So then we try to find all the reasons that we can to reason why we do the things we do, right?
Do you think everybody wants to have a closer relationship with their kids?
No, and that's what I find interesting. And maybe it's an individual thing. Yeah. Where even like I know a lot of people who have had a really hard time connecting with their kids as babies.
I was going to say, they don't even know how. Like some people probably don't even know how to connect with their kids.
Right.
Close,
I think it's all about numbers.
But then as teenagers, they might like really connect with them.
Like, have more kids or
like I'm really this fucking numerology shit.
Are we going back to that,
dude? No, but it's like every year that you're born has like an enemy year. And if your kid is born in your enemy year, you're in for a fucking terrible time.
So you got to time your babies better.
That's what they're saying. Because I was like,
avoid the enemy year.
I'm just not going to look it up just because.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's not valid because I honestly don't know enough about it. But I think the validity within it is like it speaks to a lot of what we talked about. Like everybody is different. Like, regardless of what that
Yeah.
reason is going to be, just because your kid is your kid
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're going to see eye to eye and everything. It doesn't mean there isn't going to be stages of their life, even long stages of their life,
Where
where
you're
you're
not close.
definitely not seeing eye to eye and you're not close and you're fighting about this, that, or the other. I think the difference in being a good parent, or a real parent, if I may, is making the choice that you're going to try to find out what those things are. Why aren't we seeing eye on them? Why does our relationship have tension in it right now? Because it should be the job of the parent to be like, no, I need to be the one to look at this whole situation. Is there something I need to fix? Is there something, a difficult conversation that we need to have as me and my kid? I think that should fall on us first as the parent, because that's, we decided to have them. So we should be the one to decide to patch things up.
Well, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
There's a ton of parents that just like, they're not ready, or they didn't know what the full job description was.
Yeah,
when they
1,000%.
signed up for
What
it.
I signed up for.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean?
And there's other factors too, right? Like there can be extreme postpartum that doesn't go away, and all of a sudden you have, especially like a mother who's supposed to be the nurturing one in the relationship, who cannot connect with her child. And it's like there's certain situations that are just beyond explanation and beyond difficulty. Like, yes, that's going to make that kid's life harder, that the mom can't connect with them, and yes, she's not going to be better off, and that's just brain chemistry.
Someone
happening.
teach Dave how to use his phone.
Right?
Or just require a lot of therapy.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, but you don't know how you come out the other side.
It's a lot of work.
It's just
Yeah.
like I'm trying really hard not to go political here, but
Yep.
to consume the content that I have consumed in the last 72 hours, the thing I'm struggling with the most is like the whole captive, the kids that are captive and like their families. It, to me, I couldn't, my heart, first of all, my heart goes out to those.
I don't know what you mean. Sorry.
Like, we're talking about individual families and like you don't know what you signed up for, this, that, and the other thing. If my kid was captive for over 2 years, the last thing I would do was go to a presidential inauguration and put on a yellow fucking scarf and pretend like I'm here to support X, Y, and Z.
What do you mean your kid captive? What have I missed in the world?
Well, on October 7th, there was this thing in Gaza, and they took a bunch of people.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Right. And they're hostages. They came to an agreement, and now they're releasing some of the hostages. And Trump brought in all of these hostage families to his inauguration, brought them up on stage, and then went on this rant about how some of them got decapitated and some of them got shot in the face and some of them did this, and the other thing. And he's standing in front of people saying these things, and the families are sitting there behind them like there's some sort of trophies or something.
Right.
And nothing in my, like, nothing, again, I'm not trying to go political, and like, not trying to go political.
It's okay. I'll say it. Donald Trump's a piece of shit. But, continue.
It just enrages me.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart for those families to have to go through that. And then at the same point in time, you're walking through Walmart and you hear this mom like torture this kid. And I use torture for the lack of better words. Shouldn't use that word, but just
Maybe
like
not.
belittle this child.
Right.
To the point where you're just like, you don't even know the blessing that you are wasting right now when there's that type of shit happening. And so for me, it's like, going back to what we talked about earlier, you can't love your kids enough. You don't know when the last time is the last time. So just do, like, we're all just trying our best. Just fucking do what you think is best. Be a real parent and put your energy into it. Sometimes you're going to fuck up.
Yep.
Sometimes you're going to lose your shit and you're going to scream and you're going to yell and you're going to, that's how you know it's fucking working. Right? On a daily fucking basis. You're going to question yourself. You're going to wonder why you did this. You're going to think you're a terrible parent. You're going to think you're the worst fucking parent. And then you're going to watch a fucking video when they go to bed and you're going to cry because you're going to be like, I'm fucking failing at this.
Right.
But then you're going to sit with your 3 best friends and you're going to talk about shit. Dave's going to play some weird fucking TikTok.
And you're going to decide you're doing all right.
And then you're going to realize, like, I am a fucking blessed individual to be where I'm at right now, to be able to even have these conversations and form these thoughts, and just kind of like, it's hard. And sometimes you feel like you're losing, but I promise you, you're winning. If you're listening to this, you are one of those types of people. You're our people. And
Motivational Mark. I'm about it. I'm about motivational Mark.
I think it's the seat.
It's not the seat. I can tell you that.
It's really warming up to sit beside me.
It might be Brian's energy. When's your birthday? Let's do this numbering thing.
We'll cut the tension with some comedic words from Tom Segura.
Oh, play Theo Vaughn. I love
Guys
Tom
always
Segura.
hit me up. I don't know why they trust me, but they're like, should I do it? And I'm like, yeah, of course you should do it. It's the best. It's awesome. They're amazing. And also, being a dad is easy, man. Super easy. It's way easier than being a mom. Here's all you got to do if you want to be a great dad. Seriously. Don't abandon your kid. That's it. That's all you gotta do. No, I do believe being a mother is inherently harder, especially at the beginning. And that's why I don't like when I hear men complain about it. I have friends like, my kid cries a lot. And I'm like, yeah, because you're his dad. That's why he cries a lot. If I saw your face first thing in the morning, I'd bawl my fucking eyes out too. So, what do you mean he cried? He can't talk, you dumb shit. Yeah, it means something. Figure it the fuck out. That's why they make them so cute. Did you know that? It's so you don't strangle him. My son is so fucking cute. He's not Asian baby cute, but he's right below that, you know?
It's right below.
Asian babies are cuter than bunnies and puppies combined.
They are.
I would throw away 20 white babies to have an Asian baby. But thankfully, the exchange rate is better than that. So, 5? I don't know.
It goes off the rails a little bit at the end there.
What are we supposed to say about that? Why did you play that clip?
Dave just thought it was funny, and that's why I
Why
made
did you
it
play
into
that
that.
clip?
Is dadding that just that easy?
There are so many better
Or is
videos
he-
that could have displayed that point on the internet. I'm thinking of like 4 of them in my head right now. That
Is it that simple though? Just don't
Right.
abandon your kid. Just
No.
show up.
No, it's not.
no.
The dads we're trying to be, but
Depends what your life path number is, I can tell you
But,
that.
but sometimes are we overthinking parenting too much?
I
don't
overthink
think so.
everything. You
Yeah,
see what
yeah.
I did with this fucking set here?
I think absolutely we overthink parenting.
You know how easy it is to push play on a fucking recorder here and talk to your friends?
Yeah.
Think of how overcomplicated this whole situation is. And then you complicate a problem like parenting? Of course we're overcomplicated.
But I think we're also one of the first generations that's trying to be intentional in how we parent. Like, I think everybody just thought in past generations, there was a lot of that mentality of my parents figured it out, so I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to go ask for help, and I'm just going to grit and bear it, and I should know how to do this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I feel like anyways, a lot of our generation is like, okay, no, this is just another thing we don't know how to fucking do. Help.
Yeah.
And like there's willingness to have more conversations around it. But yeah, definitely, like I think within each of our own minds, we overcomplicate certain aspects.
If you're on social media, you overcome.
Totally. Right. Even if the idea of the 4 of us sitting here having these real conversations, and there's other people that are willing to give their time to us to listen to these kinds of conversations,
Right.
tells you just how like far we have evolved. Because go back to Gary V's age,
Right.
dads aren't sitting around talking. There's not a chance you're saying I'm going to go hang out with my buddies and we're going to sit around and talk about parenting.
Right.
And that's what you tell your wife. Instantly, she's sticking one of them tags in your back pocket because she thinks you're going to the strip club or some shit.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting to think about like what the result is going to be
Yeah.
Right.
Of what?
of being like an
parenting.
active dad, being like super involved.
We're gonna get it wrong. The kids are gonna be like, my dad was a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
My dad was this.
What are their issues going to be?
Well, I
Oh,
think
yeah.
there's such like a nature versus nurture aspect to everything in life
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
right? Like of like who are you like to become like how much of that is nurtured by your environment and by your family, and how much are you just hardwired to be a certain way.
Totally.
How much of our influence onto our kids is actually going to shape who they become, right?
It's the
And
number.
I think
It's just the number.
It's
The-
only, it
it's the
didn't
day they
matter.
were born.
It was decided when they were born anyway.
It's
Yeah,
just a number,
100%.
right?
It's everything else.
So then it
So
really
mail
is
it
that
in.
simple. Just don't abandon your kid.
just don't abandon them.
Mail
Show up.
it in.
Unless they're the wrong number.
If they
Keep
are,
them around.
I'm telling you.
That's your retirement package.
I'm telling you. Let's fact check it. Let's do it.
Yeah. My parents had a lot of kids in a lot of months, so they were just spreading out their odds.
But odds are they have a favorite, and odds are they have a least favorite. And I bet you if you check it, those numbers don't like each other.
That's fair.
You could do
I'm
the
gonna
research.
check it out.
Yep.
Well,
Well,